Despite the reputation of Bloomington-Normal as a staid and quiet community with nicknames such as Borington and Insuranceville, the Twin Cities has a long history of protests. And unlike today's peaceful observances, it was not always so. In today's part 2 of this two-parter episode of McHistory, we learn about a violent streetcar strike of 1917, which involved machine guns and the state militia.
Bloomington this morning is practically under martial law, following one of the wildest nights of rioting in its history.
Before the New Deal, struggles between capital and labor often occurred on the streets of communities, which is what happened in Bloomington in 1917.
I'm Ashley Harris, an intern at the McLean County Museum of History.
This is Bill Kemp, librarian, McLean County Museum of History.
Mob attacks streetcars, power plant, and BNN offices, assaults motormen and conductors.
In the early 1900s, the Bloomington-Normal streetcar system is known as the Bloomington-Normal Railway and Light Company because often the owner of a streetcar system will also own the power plant because the streetcar system, by the turn of the last century, relied on electricity. So you had these mini monopolies. In 1904, there was a very bitter 6-month strike of streetcar employees that ended in defeat. Streetcar employees had their last raise in 1914, and by 1917, they had had enough. The Bloomington-Normal Railway and Light Company gets word of this attempt to organize a union, and everybody is fired. The railway company brings in strike breakers, and they hire detectives to protect their property.
Trouble started following a labor meeting addressed by Mother Jones at Eagles Hall.
On July 5th, who arrives on the scene but none other than Mother Jones, Mary Harris Jones, probably the most prominent labor leader at the turn of the last century.
Mother Jones, it is said, closed her address by telling the men to do something. With this incentive, hundreds of men and women gathered in front of the Eagles Hall, apparently waiting for a leader. At the psychological moment, the Park Street South main car, in charge of motorman Frank Hart and conductor Grimes, appeared at the south side of the Big 4 and L, E, and W tracks on Main Street. The throng rushed for the car and demanded that the crew leave their electric charge. It is said that motorman Hart drew a gun and made his way from the streetcar to the shanty of the crossing flagman, where he barricaded himself. A number of bricks were thrown at, and all windows broken.
Well, the mob comes upon this streetcar, and the motorman flees, brandishing a gun, but the conductor and the hired detective are beaten about the face and the head and the shoulders. They catch up to that motorman with the gun. He gets similar treatment.
Sheriff telegraphs Governor Loudon for assistance, and several companies of state troops arrived from Peoria and Chicago to preserve order and protect the city. Strikers seek conference with officials.
The mayor petitions the Illinois governor for help.
Troop G, 1st Illinois Cavalry from Peoria, reached the city at 7:30 a.m. They proceeded immediately to the BNN powerhouse at the intersection of Roosevelt Avenue and the Big 4 tracks, where they pitched camp.
1,400 Illinois militiamen set up machine gun emplacements on the courthouse square in downtown Bloomington and at the powerhouse in the warehouse district.
Several more companies of troops are on their way to Bloomington from Chicago and will reach here about noon.
It is a show of force. There's also another show of force. The largest employer in Bloomington-Normal at the time, the Chicago and Alton Railroad shops on the west side of Bloomington, all of those workers there, more than 1,000 skilled and semi-skilled craftsmen then, come to downtown Bloomington and march around the square during their lunch hour.
After the episode at the courthouse square, where the streets were filled with rioters and excitement, was at a high pitch, the crowd proceeded to the B&N power plant. The mob thronged down Main and Madison streets, armed with clubs, bricks, coal, and other missiles. At the powerhouse, a volley was showered upon the building. Many windows were broken.
The CNA employees basically tell the city of Bloomington, the street railway company, and their own employer that if this does not get settled, if this strike does not get settled, they will also go on strike, threatening to shut down larger steam lines.
Hart, it is said, stood inside the shanty and flourished a gun, threatening to shoot anyone who approached his point of vantage. A young fellow, who is more than a street urchin, ran to the switched shanty, reached through a window, and grabbed the gun from Hart's hand. A minute later, he had Hart upon his knees in the doorway of the shanty, begging for mercy, while others who gathered immediately administered a beating by brutally kicking and stoning Hart.
The mayor pleads with the street railway company, and a contract then is signed. Those that were fired are brought back. They receive a modest pay hike and a modest reduction in their time that they have to work. And that union is organized for street motormen and conductors, and that union, of course, survives today for the Connect Transit bus drivers.
Come all of you good workers, good news to
McHistory is a co-production of WGLT and the McLean County Museum of History. Charlie Schlenker produced this episode.
Which side are you on?